Hollowville, a small town tucked between wooded ridges and rolling hills, has always been lovely. Everybody knew each other's names, and the autumnal hues painted every nook and cranny. And Mr. Hatcher's pumpkin patch was at the centre of Hollowville's fall charm. There were other crops growing on this vast area of land, which spanned several acres. Wide corn mazes extended, and the delicious aroma of apple orchards filled the air. However, the majority of kids looked forward to going to the pumpkin patch all year. There would be rows upon rows of glowing pumpkins, ranging in colour from vivid orange to pastel yellow. While some were tiny and adorable, ideal for a child's first Halloween lantern, others were enormous monstrosities, frequently taking first place in the annual Hollowville's largest pumpkin contest. There were various genesis stories for the patch. While some people asserted that Mr. Hatcher's forefathers had farmed the land for many decades, others hinted at a more sinister past. Some people thought that on All Hallows' Eve you could hear faint whispers if you put your ear to the ground because they said the area was where the town's first immigrants were interred. Nevertheless, most people dismissed these tales as harmless Halloween scares for kids. There was more to the pumpkin patch than just picking pumpkins. It was a custom. Families would picnic, play games, and listen to Mr. Hatcher's stories there for whole days. His eyes flashed with mischief, despite being old and crooked from aging, especially when he related tales about Hollowville's eerie past. There was, however, a unique area of the patch. The pumpkins there grew in a perfect circle, and the land there was slightly sunken. Children in the community were warned not to go there, yet regulations frequently made locations more alluring. Young Lily and her friends, Mark and Alice, dared one another to enter the circle on a fateful evening as the sun's final rays painted the sky, starting a chain of events that would lead to Hollowville. The edges of the patch blurred into the twilight as the group drew nearer to the sunken circle, and a thin fog started to curl around their ankles. In this circle, the pumpkins appeared older, almost ancient. Their surfaces weren't as smooth. Instead, they were covered in pronounced natural grooves and marks that appeared to reveal long-forgotten stories. The edges of the patch blurred into the twilight as the group drew nearer to the sunken circle, and a thin fog started to curl around their ankles. In this circle, the pumpkins appeared older, almost ancient. Their surfaces weren't as smooth. Instead, they were covered in pronounced natural grooves and marks that appeared to reveal long-forgotten stories. They moved up closer and saw one special pumpkin sitting right in the middle. Although it wasn't the biggest, it stood out from the others due to its otherworldly vibe. It had skin that was a deeper shade of orange with intricate markings that appeared to move and shift if you looked at them for a long time. As she ran her fingertips over the perplexing carvings, Alice said, "It looks like an old type of writing." Her touch seemed to make the symbols shine dimly, illuminating the kids' faces with an unsettling light. Always anxious to demonstrate his bravery, Mark challenged Lily to etch into it. He gave her a little pocket knife and joked, imaging the face this one would make for a lantern. Lily paused, the knife chilly in her palm, but she made a meticulous incision anyway because she didn't want to be branded a coward. A bone-chilling scream resounded over the pumpkin patch as the blade sliced through the pumpkin's skin. It wasn't a child's or an animal's cry. Instead, it was an unearthly howl that carried decades' worth of suffering and rage. The pumpkins surrounding them, which had formerly been kind, began to shake, and their shadows began to dance menacingly. Alice fell back, her first uncertainty having changed to complete dread. She muttered, "We shouldn't have done that," her voice low and trembling. However, before any of them could respond, the earth itself started to move, sending them on a course they had not anticipated. The piercing cry was followed by a deafening silence in the patch. As the fog grew denser, it encircled them like a thick blanket. The three companions exchanged scared looks as they realized the seriousness of their conduct. Alice had large, fear-filled blue eyes. She murmured, "I've heard rumours about this," with trembling in her voice. "My grandmother used to tell me tales about forbidden pumpkins in this patch, some of which were said to contain the spirits of the earliest Hollowville settlers. Never even touch them, let alone carve them," was her constant warning. Mark scoffed while attempting to project an air of fearlessness. "Those are merely tales, Alice. Old stories to frighten kids. What could possibly go wrong if I carve a pumpkin?" But his voice lacked its usual confidence, and his gaze kept darting around the eerie patch. Lily gripped the pocket knife tightly and felt bad for using the contents. She recalled hearing rumours of kids who had gone into the patch at night and never came out the same. Looking back towards the entrance of the patch, which now appeared to be inconceivably far away, she remarked, "Perhaps we should leave." The scream from earlier was echoed by the wind as it started to roar. The pumpkin's carved visage shone brightly, its hollow eyes appearing to watch their every move. They jumped at every rustle and murmur from the nearby pumpkins. "I believe that second is too late," Mark said, thoughts with remorse in his voice. They drew closer as a little measure of solace from their mutual terror. The ground beneath them started to tremble and move abruptly as though it were alive. The ancient symbols on the pumpkin shinned more brightly, creating a pattern on the ground that was almost hypnotic. The group experienced an odd urge to approach it, which they were unable to repress. Alice pleaded, snatching Lily and Mark's hands, "We need to stick together." They were dragged deeper into the mysteries of the ghostly pumpkin farm by the subsequent strong shaking of the earth and the resulting blurring of their surroundings. A cacophony of voices came from the earth's depths, each more menacing, as the trio's world continued to blur and distort the previous. Age-old lullabies, agonized cries, and whispers of lost stories blended together in a cacophonous symphony. Every step they took got more difficult, as if they were moving through treacherous mud. A huge, gnarled tree root sprung up from the earth in an instant, wrapping around Mark's ankle and pulling him down. As the root dragged him deeper into the ground, he yelled and reached out, brushing Lily's hand with his fingers. In a panic, Alice and Lily attempted to liberate Mark, but additional roots started to grow, entangling their legs and dragging them downward inexorably. The pumpkins in the vicinity started to scream and moan, their carved faces twisted into horrifying looks of anguish and evil. A final laugh echoed through the patch as the ground engulfed them completely. Mr. Hatcher's voice was heard. However, it was devoid of any of the coziness or comfort they remembered. It mocked, "Welcome to the real Hollowville." The world fell into darkness. When they arrived, they discovered a place below ground that resembled the pumpkin field above ground, but was far more sinister. The ground was comprised of compacted old bones that crunched underfoot, and the sky was a spinning tornado of orange and black. The same old symbols they had observed on the pumpkin could be seen on the trunk of a large twisted tree that stood in the distance. It was pulsing with sinister energy, and lanterns bearing familiar faces from Hollowville's past, with their souls imprisoned for all time, hung from its branches. Mark, Lily and Alice became aware that they had left the universe they had been in. Their quest to leave this nightmare dimension had only begun when they roused the cursed ghosts of Hollowville's history. For a little while, the group stood motionless as they observed the macabre spectacle in front of them. The lantern's imprisoned spirits gave forth a faint, unsettling glow that illuminated the way in front of them. The faces were contorted in agony, silently asking the kids to set them free. Mark bravely took the first step on the walkway, lined with bones. "We must discover a way out." He pointed to the distant tree which was pulsing and said, "Perhaps that tree holds the key." The underground world showed its horrors as they advanced. Huge pumpkin-headed spiders crawled about. Their 8 eyes glowed ominously. Beings resembling scarecrows prowled the fields. They always had a wicked smirk on their patched mouths. Suddenly, ghastly apparitions sprang out of the fog. They were all familiar but changed former Hollowville residents, with deformed and ethereal forms. Their voices echoed with dread and anguish as they muttered riddles to the kids. "Answer correctly, and you may pass," they echoed. "Fail, and become one of us." Alice was able to solve the first few of these puzzles, since she had grown up hearing her grandmother's stories and was familiar with some of them. A section of the walkway was illuminated with each accurate response, leading them forward.